Hey book readers, today I'm not talking about Wi-Fi, high fives, or Mai Tais. I'm looking at a small category of books that fall under the umbrella of cli-fi. But what exactly is cli-fi? Well, first off, it's short for climate fiction, and it's a subgenre of eco-fiction that takes climate change and almost always makes a story about how it all went wrong. Womp womp. It could explore near or far future implications, and it feels really real a lot of the time because the intention is to tackle one of the biggest what-if questions of our time right now, and usually that means holding up a dark mirror to see where this goes if it all goes wrong. And with that happy intro out of the way, let's chat about the first cli-fi book that I'm going to talk about, and that's The Ice Lion. This book is set in the far future, and it's a really rough spot to be. The Earth is in an ice age due to man trying to reverse the effects of global warming, and now there are these vicious apex animals like bears, lions, wolves. They're pretty much everywhere, and people have regressed to an almost cave-like, caveman existence, and their tribes are constantly warring with one another. Now, the main character, Lynx, is kind of miraculously spared by one of these apex predators, by one of the ice lions, but his tribe thinks that he wasn't spared, thinks they just ran away from the animal. So they label him a coward, and they force him to try and survive for several days by himself in the icy wilderness just to prove that he's not a coward. While he's exiled, Lynx meets up with this old man who seems to be a gemin. And the gemin are these legendary, godlike beings from before the world entered the current ice age. And that's when things in the book start to get really interesting. Through this old man, the author gives us these breadcrumbs about how the world got this way, how it's just an icy sheet. Why current man is so different from what he once was, and then he gives us a little evidence about what the gemin actually are or were. The mysterious nature of all this is what keeps things interesting for sure. However, it does feel like a setup for the rest of the series, so bear that in mind, that you aren't going to get all the answers to your questions right away. Again, womp womp, but if you continue reading the series, I'm sure that's going to get even better. Next up, I'm going to talk about The Water Knife, and this is a gritty thriller set in an American Southwest that is shattered by drought, where water is more valuable than gold, and the 1%, the upper crust, they live in these luxurious habitats while everyone else is just trying to scrape by and survive. Now, there are three main characters in this one. The first one is Angel. He's a water knife. That's his title, I guess you'd say, and he cuts deals, and he kind of cuts throats as well, for this powerful gang leader. There's also Lucy. She's a journalist trying her best to expose the truth about this world. And then there's Maria, who's this young refugee, again, barely getting by, she gets by selling water. And the paths of all three of these characters eventually collide over this mystery that could change the balance of power in this world, and the result is this brutal, action-packed noir. That being said, there's a lot of violence in this one, but if you can stomach it, you're in for a really good book set in a broken world that'll make you really appreciate the next glass of tap water that you get to sip on just a little bit more. Another great cli-fi book that I've read is The Wall, and this one starts off a little slow, but it revs up to this heart-pounding ending. It's set in a near future where a massive seawall surrounds an entire nation. It's been built up to just surround this entire place after some event called The Change happened in the past. The narrator is Joseph Kavanaugh, and he's just started his mandatory 2 years of service on the wall as a defender, and his life consists of staring into the cold, dark abyss beyond the wall, waiting for the others to possibly attack. Yeah, so the others are this outside group who, even in the face of death, they regularly charge the wall trying to get in. They're desperate to get over it and just have this slightly better life, maybe, possibly, and that might sound a little bit familiar, a little bit too spot on for what the author is trying to say with this one. So anyway, for a decent portion of the book, it's a little monotonous, so you gotta get past that, but it's monotonous on purpose. Like, the life of Defender would actually be pretty boring. But suddenly, everything changes, eventually, and when the action hits, it's completely unpredictable. What's so impressive about this one is it has this simple premise, this simple setting, simple setup, but it turns into this, like I mentioned earlier, this adrenaline-pumping thriller. Next up is the cli-fi novella Permafrost, which is set in 2080 when the Earth has hardly any, I think, or maybe not even any, plants or animals left. And the solution to this climate change catastrophe is that they send an elderly woman's consciousness back in time, 50 years into the past. Somehow she has some seeds with her, and she's going to stop climate change with those seeds. Senior citizens and botanists, this is your time to shine. And the old lady's mind is placed inside another person, so you better believe that there's this whole intriguing body-snatching drama happening between the host and this uninvited brain guest. Yeah, it's a little bit difficult to follow at times because the two timelines alternate. There are paradoxes that have to get resolved. But there's enough juice to keep you turning the pages. For instance, it's not 100% obvious whether the time travel tech is being used for good or for evil. And honestly, that kind of haziness adds to the intrigue. Overall, it's an imaginative climate fiction story that builds momentum as it goes along. But again, bear in mind that it's a novella, so the story is tight and the characters don't get tons of time to make an impression. The story is what's supposed to sparkle. Next on my list is migrations, and I don't know if you've ever heard of the Arctic Tern. I hadn't either until I read this atmospheric eco-fiction novel. It opens up with these really haunting lines. It says, "The animals are dying. Soon we will be alone here." And that sets the less than cheerful tone that you can expect from this award-winning cli-fi book. So as animal life disappears, we meet Franny Stone. She's this mysterious, troubled woman who's gone to Greenland in order to track the final migration of the Arctic terns, those birds I talked about earlier, before they go extinct, because there's not many of them left. And it's quite the mission, since Arctic terns complete the longest migration of any living creature that we know of, basically going from North Pole to South Pole. And in this setting decimated by climate change, Franny talks her way onto a boat that's heading south, but as she tracks the birds, she's also trying to escape her dark past. There's something going on there. And this dark past is slowly catching up to her. What some readers might struggle with, I could totally see this, is that Franny isn't really a likable character. It's not all sunshine and rainbows with her. She's aloof, lonely, guarded, with these inner demons that are still really causing her pain, and that comes across in the pages. And while her motives are noble to observe this natural, incredible phenomenon of this migration, it feels like her quest is pretty pointless. And I think that's kind of the tough conservationist pill that the author wants us readers to swallow. It's a call to act now rather than wait till later. There you have it, my 5 favorite cli-fi novels. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, if you have any good books that are in this kind of small subgenre. Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy reading.